Well, it's Monday, or at least that's what my calendar tells me. I don't know. This day kind of snuck up on me. I don't know how you feel about Mondays, Billy, but I sort of view them as the ninja day of the week. It just sort of like appears out of the shadows, and you wake up and go, "Oh my God, what just happened?" Although I don't know, Glenn this morning claimed he was ready for Monday, so I guess there are exceptions that prove the rule. But good afternoon, Billy. Thank you for joining me here on this
Thank you for
random
having me.
Monday in October. Well, yeah, I appreciate you hanging out with me. Now, you, for me, embody the hallway track probably more than any guest I've ever had, because I feel like you and I bump into each other on a shockingly regular basis, and yet you're not a traditional computer science techie kind of person, but you're part of the reason why I wanted to do this in the first place, is an opportunity to hang out with people that I don't always get to hang out with, especially during the pandemic. So I'm delighted that you decided to join me here on the Twitch and on the YouTubes to chat a bit today. So how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. The sun is shining here. I live in almost heaven, West Virginia. So if you know country roads, anybody who's in checking this out, it's true. This is almost heaven. The sun is shining here. It's in the 70s. We had snow a little over a week ago.
Oh,
So
checks
similar
out.
to your weather, we were
Correct.
talking a little, but yeah. And on the Monday sneak up. So this past Friday was my daughter's 6th birthday, and so I took Friday off. Yes, it's kind of like
Okay,
a
now I'm
yeah,
really feeling old, because
yeah.
I distinctly remember when she was just a little peanut. So thank you for making me feel old, Billy.
Well, I also feel that, right, because it was yesterday that she was
I
a
know,
peanut.
I know.
Um,
Yes.
but we spent the day. I took the day off, and just we made it kind of, hey, what do you want to do for breakfast? What do you want to do for an adventure? So we were able to go out and hike a little bit, and but then, as you said, Monday kind of sneaks up. It most definitely did when I took Friday off. Lots of surprises. So
That's right. That's right. Well, Glenn says we're not actually supposed to talk about the secret hallway track, but I'm convinced that that's actually one of the most important reasons to go to conferences. I
this is
mean,
true.
the talks are fantastic. Don't get me wrong. As someone who sits on that side of the podium, I do hope you're coming to see us. But I think some of the richest interactions, some of the biggest benefits we get from these events is bumping into somebody that adjacent possible. And I know you and I've certainly had lots of conversations ranging from kids to much less important topics for sure. But I think that's what I missed most during the pandemic, frankly, was not having that adjacent possible. And I think that's something that I'm glad to see as we get sort of back in person again, that folks are able to take advantage of that. So keep that in mind when you're trying to convince your boss why you should come out to Spring One here in December. Hey, it's the only place you can get the secret hallway track. So I guess, well, I
Completely.
don't know, Glenn, is it really a secret if we're talking about it like this? Maybe I shouldn't. Or am I going to get kicked out of the speakerati for talking about the secret hallway track? I don't know. We'll see if Glenn has any other thoughts. But anyway, yeah. Oh, here we go. Yep. So yeah, Glenn agrees that it's the napkin-based design sessions. To that point, Glenn, I've actually seen people sit down and code through things together during hallway track kind of things. I saw a picture out of Java 1, and it was Josh and Jonathan and shoot, I can't remember who else was hanging out with them, but there they were sitting there coding away clearly on something at Java 1. So, the system works. But
Yeah.
well, so Billy, you are from the wonderful state of West Virginia, but what's your origin story? How did you get to where you are today? Tell me more about your background, and I'm sure that will venture into a certain school that you and I have discussed a few times.
Well, before I do, I just want to also plus one the hallway conversation. I think uh, especially now that more and more people are growing accustomed to remote work and
Yeah.
Zoom meetings, that it can feel inefficient or like not a good use of funding, for budgets, but there's so much added value, especially
Right.
when teams go to a conference.
Right.
But like the end, and you just get a dynamism that isn't there. You're fully focused
Mm-hmm.
when you're at a conference. I mean, I know you know this, but like I also like I just really appreciate the fact that like
Right.
we are getting back to spending real time as real people together and not perpetually distracted by a bunch of other windows on computers and things like that. So origin story, I was born. That was, a pretty significant moment in my life. I don't remember a lot about it, but I'm here now.
We heard it was a big day.
Yeah. There's a big celebration in my family around it once a year. It's pretty great. But I was born here in West Virginia, and I grew up on the Ohio River. Not sure, folks. It connects to the Mississippi, the mighty Mississippi that's there in the Twin Cities. So we've been connected for a long time, long before we ever met.
That's right.
And so grew up. My family, we lived in a neighborhood in Parkersburg, West Virginia, and my dad was the assistant head custodian at my high school, and my mom was a sales clerk at the drugstore across the street. And we lived next door to my grandparents, like kind of smack dab in the middle of town. And they were, so I'm going to share a few different slices of origin story, and cut me off at any point or redirect. But a lot of growing up was spent playing outside. Like and probably from a tech perspective, I should say my first computer was a Commodore 64. I had a 1541 disk drive. Get a load
of this guy.
So that kind of dates, the era that I grew up.
Yes.
And
a great era, by the way.
Yeah,
fantastic.
It was a
good
great
vintage.
Era.
Good vintage.
Yes. And Atari 2600 for the non-technical side, which essentially the Commodore 64 was also a gaming device. So grew up, and we didn't have a lot, but we had a real close sense of family. And a lot of times my parents needed to run errands. My grandparents were my de facto babysitter. And my grandpa, this is on my mom's side, he was a carpenter, and this is a skill that I don't know if it even exists anymore. He would file the teeth on saws.
Really?
Like hand saws. He would sharpen them. And like he had like a what do you call it? The thing that hangs outside of a business, hanging off of his front porch.
Sure.
That people could stop by and get their saws sharpened. And I can remember him filing individual teeth like as a little boy. And I don't know. I've never seen anything like that other places. I'm sure it exists, but
pretty labor intensive.
Yeah. And so, but I tell that, just as part of my origin story, when I was probably like 7 or 8 years old. I don't even know if I've shared this with you before, is all the random conversations we've had. And I was being babysat by my grandma, and we would spend our time, like evenings, watching kind of like the lineup of A-Team, Dukes of Hazzard, those kind of shows, and like, pregame a little bit with Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune to see if we could outguess the contestants.
Yep.
And one Friday night, my grandma started calling out in pain, and she was I think she was having a heart attack at the moment, or I thought that, like, and she ended up it was, but I started to get really scared.
I bet.
And I remembered that they taught me in school that if I dialed 911, that people would come and help. And so I ran to my grandma's rotary dial phone, dialed 911. The dispatch picked up and said, what's your emergency? I said, well, it's my grandma. I think she's having a heart attack. You've got to send somebody. Please help. And they said, all right, we'll send someone right away. I hang up the phone, and 2 minutes later, the phone rings. I pick it up, and this person answers, and they're like, hey, we got a call from a kid at this number. And we just want to make sure this isn't a prank. And it was me. I'm the kid. It's my grandma.
Right.
She's really sick. You need to send someone. And we said, okay, we'll send someone right away. And then, like, within a matter of minutes, there was an emergency dispatch there.
Sure.
And they were able to get my grandma to a hospital. And one of the first responders pulled me aside and just said, son, you saved your grandma's life tonight.
Wow.
And I think that was the first time, we hear things like, oh, you can use your voice to make a difference, or you can make a difference in the world. But like, it was the first time that, like, I had a sense of my own agency.
Sure.
That, hey, I can, and I did use my voice to help somebody else. And I want to do more of that. That's a good thing.
Right.
And so that's part of my origin, that I just feel like is you're getting to know me, and anybody tuning in is getting to know me. But that started me on a trajectory. And I think too, like, there are values that we all learn from our families, and we can either embrace those values, reject those values, or some mix. So and we didn't have a lot monetarily growing up, but again, we had like this really awesome extended family. And we by we, I mainly mean my dad, because I was such a punk kid. I hated any part of this. Like, looking back, I just think I was I missed out on a lot of stuff. But we grew our own food. We canned, like, so little jars, boiling water, and hot house all day. Beans, tomatoes. We made sauerkraut, things like that, and put it all up, as they say, put it up for the winter. And I can remember just going through the neighborhood, periodically, either selling surplus, from our, like, not canned stuff, but like fresh vegetables, or giving away, like putting a bucket on someone's porch or something like that. But that was a little bit of my origin and background story to kind of set me on a different trajectory, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense given what you do for a living now, right? I can see the through line from that to your current occupation. So why don't you tell folks a bit about Nuru and what you do there, and things that, I mean, I certainly know the story. I've seen you give the pitch, but what is Nuru, and how did you decide to get involved with them?
Sure. So the short form, what Nuru is, we help families who are living in extreme poverty in Africa, in areas that are proximate to conflict, to have options, to be able to chart a path out of poverty for good. And we do it. When I say options, I mean, there are oftentimes insurgent groups recruiting, exploiting condition of poverty to, like, bring people into their cause. And so we work in areas where we want to help people have real choices. And my path getting involved is a little bit circuitous, but like
most of us.
Yeah, like all of life, really, right? Like so a key point was my freshman year of college. Had a really tight knit group of friendships in our dorm, and went to West Virginia University, amazing public university. I love it so much that I planted roots here in Morgantown, and found my wife here, like, or she discovered me. No, I'm really, really blessed with her. And
never underestimate the generosity of the female spirit, Billy.
yeah, exactly. So freshman year, we had this tight knit group of friends, and like so many of us, doing stupid things, middle of the night road trips. Pittsburgh is a bigger city close to us,
right.
so we would take a road trip in the middle of the night to go to Pittsburgh and eat at like this Denny's type thing called Eaton Park. It's a Western Pennsylvania, maybe a few in West Virginia restaurant, 24-hour kind of diner ish place, and then we would just drive back. Pull like an all-nighter and drive back. And during one of those, not an occasion where we were driving, but on a different occasion, it was finals week. When most people are not studying, right? Like you have intermittent studying with frantic pulling out your calculator and, if I get a 72 on this, I can still get so
I can still get a B in that class.
Exactly. So, okay, I'm going to focus on this other, 72 and a half, and none of us can really remember who said this, but one of our circle of friends had said, like, hey, what if we all came together here to do something really big later in life? That maybe like the reason why we're all such good friends is that we're going to accomplish something that we'd never accomplish on our own together. Which is amazing that anybody in their, like 18, 19-year-old mind would think something like that. But it's literally how things seem to play out. So Nuru was started by or founded by a buddy of mine from freshman year who lived 2 doors down, and our board chair was his next door neighbor. And we've had support from a group of people from our dorm and beyond, like helping to move things forward. But it's just kind of wild. And like that buddy, part of my story is also really connected to his story indirectly. His story is he transferred to the Naval Academy from WVU after his sophomore year, which we all thought was insane, because you don't get to really transfer credits. It's like a do-over. And he was an engineering student, and he was like, I feel like I need to do this. If I don't do this, I feel like I was meant to, I'm missing out on what I was supposed to do if I don't do this. And we're like, yeah, but dude, seriously. And he ended up going to the Naval Academy, was like I think he's like second or third in his class, was a Rhodes Scholar semifinalist, just this brilliant guy. And he would never say any of this if he were on, but I could say this as his friend. And he was when he graduated from the Naval Academy, went into the Marine Corps and went into a special operations unit called Force Reconnaissance. And while he was serving during the Iraqi invasion, he was witnessing this connection between terrorism, insurgency, and poverty, that people were recruiting poor farmers to fight and taking advantage of their lack of choices. And I tell that as part of, my origin to Nuru, because without Jake Harriman, our founder, without our friendship, I don't know that I would be doing exactly what I'm doing now. But my own personal path was running parallel, not in the military. I was in a this is super random, definitely not military. I was in a graduate level English class at West Virginia University that was African American literature from 1793 to 1861, like you do,
like one does.
And all the writers were writing about the issue of slavery and why slavery should be abolished. And I remember sitting in the class and thinking, I can't understand, how could people have been so blind to this issue? This is less than 200 years ago. This is, the land of the free, kind of like, this doesn't make sense. And I started to get really angry. And like within a matter of seconds, my mind went to, what will people say 200 years from now?
Sure.
Like, what's the issue that we maybe could be doing something about, addressing, that like they'll look and say, how could they have let this happen on their watch?
Right.
And my mind was flooded with all kinds of stuff. I mean, we have slavery still a thing. There's more slaves in the world today than any point in history. Child soldiers, the environment, HIV/AIDS, trafficking, and then there's poverty.
Right.
And this is also around the time that Bono was starting the One campaign to advocate toward the end of extreme poverty. Bono from U2, for those of you who may not know. I know you know.
See, that's when you know you got some cojones, when you just go, I just have one name. Or The Edge, even more, right? I mean, that's exactly, imagine what it's, or Sting, because I think Sting's original name, like his actual name is Gordon or something like that. And I would love to know how that conversation went. Listen, Billy, no, call me Sting. I mean, it's just, I would love to know how that works.
No doubt. So, sorry, I'm being so long-winded here.
This is, I mean, that is just amazing to me. And I've got so many things I want to jump off on, but sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just,
no, you're good. So I'm sitting in this class and I'm thinking, extreme poverty is like this like enabling environment for all things bad, right? Sure. Like, it doesn't mean that you get rid of extreme poverty and you get rid of all these other problems, but at least you're taking away an environment where these other problems can seem to thrive. And so it started me thinking in a different direction. And the other guy from our dorm, our board chair, a guy named John Hancock's, I keep looking down, and there's no notes here or anything. It's just something I do. I just wanted to mention it. So, so John we were talking, and he's like, "Hey, what's next for you?" And I'm like, I'm thinking about a degree in international development or French. And John's like, French is the second most commonly spoken language on the continent of Africa. And I said, indeed, I did know that. It's also an official language of the UN. And not very many people, at least in my mind, not very many people take French as a degree. And so maybe I could get some scholarship money to cover costs for school. Sure. And he's like, hey, have you talked to Jake lately? And then Jake and I started talking the way you do when one of you is in rural Kenya in the summer and the other's in West Virginia. We were G-chatting each other like, hey, man, what's happening? And so we agreed to meet for an hour on Labor Day 2007. And I remember because it was Labor Day, and he had locked in a bunch of meetings through the day on that day back here in West Virginia. He'd come back. He also, another deal with him was he was in the middle of an MBA at Stanford. So, total slouch. We started talking, and that hour became a whole day. And I'm like, hey, I'm just going to go with you whoever else you're meeting with. I want to learn as much as I can. I don't know if there's a way that I can add value to this idea, but if I can, I'm in. And even if I can't, I'm in, indirectly, whatever way I can support. And so that was kind of the beginnings for me. We launched actually in September of 2008. Yeah. So like a year later, he had to finish his degree, and then we were off to the races in southwestern Kenya.
That is just amazing to me that you'd have that conversation, because I mean, I think about some of the conversations I had in dorm rooms and on dorm floors, and they were nothing like, man, we're gonna change the world someday. Like we're just like, hey, who wants to play Goldeneye? That was the dominant theme, as I recall, thinking back to college at least. But that sense of agency to me is really fascinating. And do you have any thoughts or tips, or like, we all have agency. We all have that ability. And yet so many of us are just like, man, there's nothing I can do, or that somebody else will fix that problem. I mean, how do we, like take advantage or capture or realize our own agency, if that makes any sense at all.
It does, and you know, I feel very unqualified. I can only experientially answer, you know, like what's helped me.
I mean, it amazes me that I mean, obviously, Nuru and Jake like looked at this problem and like, we can do something about this, and let's see what we can do, and I think so many of us get like paralyzed a bit about the enormity of it, and it's this, well, if all I do is take care of this one little thing, that's not a big deal. And I see that like from a technical perspective, where I see this a lot is code bases that don't have any tests or have a lot of, you know, cruft in there. And people are like, oh, well, there's no point in me fixing up because it's such a huge pile. You might as well make it a little better than it was. And even if you only improve one person's life, isn't that worth something? You know, and I think we need to move beyond or try to just relax a bit about, yeah, it's an enormous problem, but let's see what little we can do to help, even, and that might turn out to be something big, or it gets the ball rolling towards something that is larger and impactful.
Yeah, you know, it's so funny. No, actually, it's kind of what I'm going to say is a little bit tragic, but like, you know, just we get so caught up in what we can't do, and we're so concerned about the significance of our impact or the insignificance of our impact, or I've been seeing this more and more the last few years. You know, I'm going to sound like an old guy. Oh,
get off my lawn.
Yeah, exactly. Like people are
whippersnappers.
We're so caught up in complaining about the way the world is that we and it's almost like we're armchair quarterbacking like life, right? Like, hey, you know, I can't believe this person did something so dumb, or like, what a horrible person. They said this or they did this, and you know, and they should have been doing this other thing. And I think that and I'm speaking in broad terms, but like narrowing in, like looking around, and if you find yourself saying those things, like you know, pull little Michael Jackson, I'm starting with a man in the mirror, like, hey, what can I do? You know, I had a friend, you know, complaining about political grandstanding over like the immigration issue, and as I was listening, I just thought, you know, I hear what you're saying, but like if you care about this issue, complaining isn't fixing it.
Right.
What you could do to fix it would be, you know, maybe just meet an immigrant. You know, there's probably one in your town at least, right? Like, and they feel, or meet a refugee. They're like overwhelmed. They could really use just somebody coming alongside them. And so like on the agency front, a couple of things, like one, like look for the problems that you can address. Like what are the things that like bother you? And instead of just, oh, that just bothers me, like do something about it. And then, and this will sound silly and tangential, but I think it matters. Like, if you want to be better at exercising agency, be better at exercising agency in little things. So, you know, like, and especially like in the middle of having so much of our lives changed in the last couple of years, like, hey, I can still exercise. I can still, you know, connect with my friends, you know, whether it's virtually or, you know, like in person in, you know, limited circumstances. I can still eat, you know, like normal. I can still I did say exercise. I can sleep, but I can kind of take some control and be proactive in moving the needle, you know, like instead of letting externalities define me, you know, what is the term, an inward versus an outward or exterior locus of control. Doubling down on that interior locus of control. So
Sure.
sorry,
Yeah,
I
I
was
mean,
long-winded.
I
Again.
think that's a great point. I mean, I think about some of the things that Christine and I have done over the last 20 years, and I think about our CSA is
Yep.
located, I don't know, 7-8 miles from where we live, and so in the summer we get all this amazing fresh vegetables from this farm that's just down the street, and I realize that doesn't have a massive impact on global food supply or anything, but I do take some pride's maybe a strong word, but some solace in the fact that we're helping support a neighbor.
Completely.
We're supporting local farmers, allowing them to do what they love to do and provide this great food, these great vegetables that we get all summer long. And I think that I hope that then encourages more people to do that, and then maybe that starts to snowball into a bigger effect. So I think it's a good point that it doesn't always have to be huge things. You don't have to start
Yeah.
a global fund, and try to raise $2 billion. I mean, it can just be donating some of your time, or focusing on those issues that are important to you. And I don't know. I mean, I see that a lot from the technical perspective. Is there's so many organizations, whether that's Nuru or others, that need technical help. And I've often encouraged people, if you're really looking for an excuse to play with something technologically, or you're not scratching an itch at work, volunteer for your local animal shelter, or
Yeah.
whatever thing you're passionate about. There's a pretty good chance that they have an opportunity for you to make an impact on some people's lives. And to me, that's rarely a bad thing.
I completely agree. I think that I think we're hardwired to like we were made to serve.
Yeah.
Like we were made to look out for the betterment of others, and we are most fulfilled when we're doing that. I
Right.
think about that with you know when you're at a conference, you're kind of living in your gifting in a way. You're serving this group of people who are coming in to learn how to be a better architect, to be a better developer, as they're hearing from you. And there's a sense of fulfillment for you that comes
Right.
from seeing people get it,
Right.
and taking what you've learned in through experience and making it available for other people. And I think we tend to diminish and downplay if we're not the person in the front of the room, or we're
Sure.
not kind of like leading the efforts, but like looking where we can, kind of looping it back to the CSA. You could choose to buy your groceries all at the supermarket,
Right.
and that farmer is not going to benefit from that.
Right.
And you choosing to do that CSA, and maybe you talk to other people in your area, like, hey, like
Right.
I got some great tomatoes just down the road. Like, this is
Right.
fantastic. It's like all bagged up every week. And then it catches on. It grows to be something more than it would have been otherwise. So I'm a big proponent of CSAs too. So
Yeah.
no surprise,
We
probably, but
no, that sounds right in your wheelhouse, my friend. We also have the best way I can describe it as a meat CSA, and there's a local, I guess more of a co-op, but same kind of thing, where they have phenomenal stuff, and now they branched into milk and eggs, and they just keep kind of adding on. We had a turkey from them last year for Thanksgiving that was amazing, and so I think there's a lot of benefit in that, being able to help. And I really appreciate the fact that I'm essentially helping my neighbors. That I'm not just feeding more money into some giant corporation, nameless, soulless kind of thing, and knowing that this is going to help people who literally live, within my neighborhood, and then they're going to spend that money in the neighborhood too, right? They're going to go out to eat. They're going to make, oh, hey, this restaurant can exist because there's more of this going on, and maybe that encourages other people to do those kinds of things. But yeah, I think I hope people become more aware of their agency, and I feel like the pandemic gave all of us an opportunity to kind of pause almost and reflect on we happy with where we are? Are we happy with what we're doing in our lives? Is there a better way for us to spend our gifts and our time? And it's pretty clear from the amount of people who've changed jobs, moved, et cetera, that many people took that opportunity. And I genuinely hope that for most people that meant a better outcome.
Same. And I had two things pop in my head, just, thinking about the Great Resignation, right? Like a lot of people are trying to be more faithful to their values as opposed to, hey, I'm scoring a paycheck, I'm scoring bank, like that's good, like it's not bad to have money, like,
right.
but
right. We all have bills to pay.
Yeah, exactly. And but then like being able to find something where you can pay the bills and be contributing to your community, and you don't have to change careers also to do
Right.
this.
Right.
There's a guy, Wendell Berry. You familiar with Wendell? He's a agrarian writer. Really fascinating story. I think he was a professor at NYU.
Okay.
And grew up in on a rural farm in Kentucky. Was an English professor at NYU and decided to leave academia to go back to the family farm. And
Wow.
he's written on. He's been a prolific writer for 50 plus years. He's in his 80s, and but he focuses on the local economy and the need for people to be contributors in their local economy. So CSA is one example of that, going, and supporting local businesses. But his argument is like really essentially like looking for opportunities to take care of people who you can, whoever those folks are. So I was trying to think of a book, but like lots of books. But yeah, sorry.
No,
I'm apologizing a lot, but like,
there's nothing to apologize for. This is what the hallway track is, brother. That. It's these random one-off conversations. I
feel like I'm like, holding you back from, hey, I've got a session to get to, and so
no, God, not at all. See, that's the nice thing is we don't have anything else on the calendar, right? So the beauty of
we can just
these.
talk.
We can just keep talking. We don't have to worry about, oh shit, dude, I got to go to a talk. Oh, now it's got to have the explicit tag. That's fine. That's fine. Whenever we upload these things, we always have to check the box that says, no, this is not meant for children. And I don't exactly know why. I don't know what that does or doesn't do, but we always sort of sit on that side of the fence just in case we did use a bad word. But such is life.
Good to say. But I think it's like, I kind of wonder about that too. If it's like, if you don't check that box, if it's automatically assumed that it is for children.
I'm
not
sure.
that it's in all ages, but like that.
Right.
Oh no, this was created for, and
Right. Yeah. I can't imagine too many 5-year-olds finding this conversation particularly enthralling, and that's okay. No. It's not really aimed at them. It's not aimed at them. But, oh man. So how does technology play into this for you? Because we were talking about that a little bit in the pre-show, and it's amazing to me what we can do with our phones today. This is something that I've had to try to explain to my son, because he's the same age as the iPhone. So to him, the iPhone is just air. It's always existed, and I didn't fully appreciate that until he was staring at this phone we have mounted on the wall in the kitchen. That's one of those made to look like an old time phone, but it's not. And although of course we've got rid of our landline years ago, so I don't even know why we still have it on the wall, other than I'd have to fix the hole. But he was asking like, why are the numbers arranged in a circle? Because of course on your phone it's the normal grid, and so I had to explain to him a little bit of that, and so it's occurred to me that our phone has replaced 10, 15, 20 devices for us, and I think that's one of the most amazing things to me is how we're able to use these things in ways that no one at Apple or Google or Samsung or Nokia ever even imagined. And so I'm curious, from your perspective, like what role does technology play in trying to sort of level some of these playing fields or help people give them some more options.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I will be long-winded once again.
Good.
Connecting some dots, just to even like lay out a little bit of how we're doing things at Nuru. We focus a lot on cooperatives, which you had mentioned just a few minutes ago, and helping farmers organize. So going from subsistence farming to farming as a business, and that's a farmer-owned business, and helping them connect to markets. And so one of the most amazing ways, at least to me, one of the most amazing ways technology plays a part in that is with phones, we are able to do cashless transactions. Like, we don't think about that as a big deal,
right?
But if you're carrying around a lot of money or
a
a little bit of money, it looks like a lot, and you're a target. And to be able to do secure cashless transactions, particularly in rural communities, we only work in remote rural communities. That's a big deal, and like it's a nominal transaction in some currencies would look like a big briefcase full of money, and so in some ways the brick and mortar bank has been skipped too,
right?
By being able to use, like in Kenya, I want to say for like 15 years there's been this technology called M-Pesa that's like a mobile money app. Like they're like on it, like doing all transactions through that. And then like tools like there's this tool that we just started working with this year that it's called Ignitia, and it's like a micro weather service app that sends weather updates to feature phones. And so like we have an app that tells us our general vicinity's weather. This is like based on your GPS coordinates, maybe one hill over there's rain and you are not going to get that rain. And if you've historically planted according to timelines, and the climate and weather have fluctuated, so those timelines are shifting,
right?
You want to optimize, and I'm talking, as a West Virginian to a Minnesotan, you want to optimize the time for planting. And so we're putting those tools in the hands of farmers to be able to make informed decisions for planting. And then we also have been working with this group, like naming all these tools that may not be as relevant to this audience, but it's we're reminding hopefully you all that there are a lot of different applications for what you're working on a daily basis that you may not think of. There's a group in the Netherlands that developed this tool called Scope Insight that measures the maturity of a cooperative on a 5-point scale. Kind of like, so cooperatives can fail for a number of reasons. Like you can have nepotism, you can have poor financial controls, so like helping a farming household improve their income and improve their crop yield at an individual level, that's a good thing. It's a far better thing if you can help them create a business that can sustain, grow, thrive, diversify, and stand over time. Because then that farmer who's got this increase in crop yield, increase in income, they're able to feed their family, they're able to have cash on hand for family emergency, which those come up. They
usually at inconvenient times,
very inconvenient times, and so we help families to do that. But then we're also, if they just had that increase in crop that allowed them to have a surplus to sell by themselves, they're not going to reap the benefits of being able to sell with a group of other farmers in their community and like selling in volume. And so we work with this tool that measures on a 5-point scale. I think the global average is a 3.2 or 3.3. And so it's just a number spit out like at the, the end of the day. But we target maintaining a global average with the cooperatives we're working with the farmers we're working with. We've been able to, be in the 4+ range, generally after a few years of working with the cooperative and trying to help those cooperatives be profitable. But the tool, back to the specialty tech tool, like one of the amazing things about it is it's providing detailed instructions on, or detailed feedback on, hey, your cooperative scored a 3.8 out of 5.0. You could improve your score if you had more diversity on your management committee for your cooperative, or you were able to establish 2 new market linkages that were consistent for your cooperative. And so the cooperative can take that feedback and make its own improvements. So it's not like somebody has to be around perpetually saying, oh no, if only you do, like, hey, here are the instructions.
Right. Here's the manual.
Yeah. You can choose to take this feedback and use it and improve, and kind of looping it back to code, right? Like, we can either learn from the code that came before and make improvements, or we're just not going to bother with it. Like, we'll patch a break when it happens. Like, no, like we're responsible, and like, again, bring it back around, but like, that's agency, like accepting responsibility for, hey, if this breaks, it's mine. I broke it, like it was on my watch. So
yeah, no, I think that's great. Is again, I mean, I'm amazed. I'm always amazed whenever we start getting these conversations, the themes that come up. And if in the pre-show, it never occurred to me we'd be talking about agency, but I think that's such a powerful concept. And Glenn's with you on this one. Glenn says that's just wow. I agree, Glenn. I am just blown away by where we ended up going here today. I come into these without any preconceived notions, right? I mean, I have kind of rough ballpark of where I think it's going to go, and it never does. So I thank you, Billy, for that.
Yeah.
But I just think it's such a good reminder of, we look at something that we might think of, oh, that's so trivial, and it can have a massive impact on people's lives and improve it in ways that we can't imagine. And I think we also lose sight of the cycle that then perpetuates when that farmer starts having more money and can start solving some problems. Well, now their children are also lifted out of that situation, and they can go on to do things that they never would have had the opportunity to do before. And you play that forward a couple generations, and the kind of change you're going to see is just, mind blowing.
Yeah. And you reminded me. So I recently had the privilege of reading a review copy of a book that's coming out tomorrow, called Idea Flow. And it's, I think, Idea Flow, the only metric that matters, but it's on creativity and innovation.
Cool.
And the reason why I'm mentioning it, I think it would be just good for this audience. But one of the things that stuck out to me in the reading is that when you're brainstorming, make sure you get the obvious down.
Right.
So what may be obvious to you may not be obvious to anyone else in the room. And and just by naming that, and reflecting what you were sharing, like you can just run under the assumption, oh, of course, like we've got all these, tools and technologies in these phones, like we've come all this way, and not really think about, like, oh, hey, this could be a really new use for this tool. And like, anyway, it's pretty cool. Just
what it makes me think of when you talk about, you got to explain even the things you think are obvious. I remember watching Everett play baseball. I did Little League for a couple of years, and of course, he's left-handed, so I'm thinking, hey, left-handed pitcher, but it wasn't the right spot for him, and that's fine. That's fine. I get it. My eyesight's so bad. I could play up until I got to basically high school, and then no, just the game was too fast for me. The ball came too fast. I couldn't do it. But I remember thinking, watching one, and again, this was like when he was 5 or 6, right? So this is very like T-ball kind of era. Watching one of his teammates run from home base to like third base instead of first base. And in your head, you're thinking, oh, how do you not know that? And you're like, well, it's all arbitrary. And unless someone explains the rules to you,
completely,
why do you go to first instead of third? Why not go to second? I mean, it's just clockwise, counterclockwise. It's just an arbitrary choice. And so there's a lot of that, I think, where we just, well, of course, that, like, I had no idea. And I know there's multiple instances of that happen to all of us, where you're like, oh, wait, that's what that's for in my car, or that's what that little thing is on my jacket. If you don't know it's there and no one bothers to explain it to you, so I think it's the same way with, again, a lot of these things we talk about with agency, of just really getting people to grasp the control they do have and
completely
the power they have to positively change and affect the world.
Yeah. And what you were saying about Everett made me think about the one I can relate to, being the left-handed. I played first base. And then it was, and I could throw pretty hard, but I could not throw with a lot of control from the pitcher's mound. First base, I was great. Pitcher's mound, there was something weird, some weird juju happening. So my career didn't take off. But this past summer, my daughter was on a swim team.
Yeah.
For the first time, and bro, it was so amazing. She's like sitting, waiting. I've never been to a swim meet, so like I'm also a foreigner in this.
Right. Like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah, and like it's outdoor. It's at a pool, and the kids have to go off in a separate area to line up and get queued up. And this is both the obvious and agency at the same time. It was really beautiful. So my wife and I are on the far end of the pool, so we can cheer her on as she's swimming toward us, and maybe be an encouragement, like swim this direction. But she's sitting in a chair. It's like she's up next, and she sees somebody like about like sitting in a lifeguard stand, and she's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Sure.
And so the person got off the lifeguard stand, walked over, and they're like, okay, I'm going to blow this whistle, or, this horn. And then you jump in the water and just swim as fast as you can to the other side. And she's like, okay.
So I could do that.
She's standing there. She's waiting. The horn goes off. All the other kids jump in the water. And then she's like, oh. And so she starts going. And like, it was agency side of like, I don't know. It's okay to ask a question. And like, it's especially, I think it's worth saying on this stream, just when you're in technology, there's kind of like a desire to be like the alpha geek, to like know the
person in the room,
and like there's so much benefit of saying I don't know, can you help me? Everybody else understands this, and I'm going to look really dumb right now, but I have no idea. And my daughter, it's beginner's mind. People talk about like, hey, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So she jumps in the water and she's like swimming, but her grandparents on the side, and she's just waving to them. So she's just having fun. But
that's awesome.
Swimming and waving. But like we lose that as we age. Not like because we're trying to impress people, and like if we just stop worrying about trying to impress people, like and I'm saying that knowing you and knowing some of the people that you hang out with, like there's just and maybe I've got this gauged wrong too. You can correct me, but I think that folks that we end up talking with at conferences, there are a lot of folks, there's like this collective humility of like, hey, like I want to learn. Like we're
Mhm.
trying to stay on the cutting edge. What are you reading? What are you
Right.
experiencing? Um, and like it's just it's a beautiful thing to be in a group
Yeah.
of people who have that mindset versus
Yeah.
I'm going to keep all this to myself and I'm going to make
Right.
you feel dumb if you don't know the answer to this question or whatever. So
Right. Yeah, I think it's that humility married with curiosity. And Glenn's got a great comment here that these sort of 101 talks aren't always the ones that conferences are interested in accepting. Although I have to admit, some of the most well attended talks that we've had at Spring One that I've seen at other events were these 101 kind of things. We forget that there's this constant new generation of beginners, and it we lose sight of where we used to be, right?
yeah,
When you're
yeah,
experienced at something, you forget what it was like not to know this thing, or not to know the rules or the etiquette, et cetera. So much of it is unspoken, or so much of it is someone has to take you under their wing and explain it to you. I mean, I think about that with golf. There's so many things in golf that, my wife, Christine, started playing with me again recently. And I try to keep explaining things to her as we go, because you always remember that, yes, somebody had to teach me that too, as to how you act around other golfers, or what you do
yeah.
on the green and things of that nature. And it does, in my experience, the people who lack that humility tend to be the ones that don't know as much as they profess to know, and they know
Mm,
that, and they're afraid.
yeah.
And it does take a certain amount of courage to be like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out. I'll find out for you. And
Yeah.
but I mean, you're absolutely right. And I do think that is one of the things that I'm very, very privileged in, that the group of people that I've managed to sort of surround myself with, to a person, all have that sort of innate curiosity, that
Mm,
desire to share, and some of that self-selecting, the handful of times you get somebody into that group that doesn't embody that, the body politic kind of ejects them, right? The
yeah,
antibodies
yeah.
come out, and it's yeah, maybe this isn't the right space for you. But
Right,
yeah,
right.
that's a great point. That humility and that curiosity is so vital to this game.
And I think there's another part there that you mentioned too. So there's humility, curiosity, beginner's mind coming in, always knowing that there's way more that you don't know. But on the flip side, uh, this is what I was hearing as you were describing golf etiquette. On the flip side, you can kind of get stuck, or the bread and butter talk, right? Like you can get stuck in everybody knows this. I
Right,
don't really need to present on this. I don't really need to share this. I
right,
really need to talk about this new shiny thing because that's where all the action's at. That's what conferences are wanting. And
right.
what people, most of the people, probably, all of the people who are coming to your session are coming eager to learn.
Yes,
Um, and they don't have the background that you have. And I'll say most, because there's always one or two people who are like
sure.
they want to be smarter than the
Yeah,
presenter.
that's
Um,
inevitable.
yeah, but there's most people, they just want to learn, and like the things that you assume are common knowledge are pretty uncommon. And so
Right,
being
right.
being willing to slow it all down is really
Hmm.
important for learning.
Hmm. Yeah, I think one of the most powerful things you can have on a project, frankly, is someone who's new to it. And whether that's new to the organization, new to the project, new to the industry,
Yep.
it's amazing what beginners see, or what the fresh set of eyes sees that you don't. I mean, I had this conversation with a client. This was a few years back, and they're having a performance issue. And so they're walking me through their architecture. And the basic gist of it is, for their clients, the clients give them boxes of widgets. They got to process the widgets. And so when they started, they only had a few clients. The clients only had a few boxes of widgets. And so they just did everything sequentially. Well, now they're so successful. They have so many clients, and they got so many boxes of widgets. They can't finish processing things overnight. So how do we make things faster? I said, well, do you need to process the widget sequentially? Does the processing of widget A have anything to do with the processing of widget B? And there's kind of this pregnant pause. And like, no, it just, we do a little aggregation at the end. I said, well, could you just have like a pool of workers that just grabs the next one, does its thing, spits the results out somewhere, and then at the end you do your aggregation? They're like, yeah. Yeah, we never thought of that. Now, I don't. I mean, I'd like to think that I'm smarter than the average bear, but what I really brought to that conversation was no preconceived notions about how it was supposed to work.
Yeah.
And I could ask the dumb question, the obvious question, because, well, I don't really care, right? I care. I want you to be successful. I want to help
Right.
you,
Right.
but I'm not worried about asking the embarrassing question like, oh my God, how could you ask that? Yeah, I'm going to ask the obvious question,
Right.
and maybe
Right.
you've got a great answer as to why it has to be that way. Maybe not. And so I think it's just this, and I've seen that repeatedly in my career,
Yeah.
where somebody new joins the team and they're asking you like, why do you do it this way? And you're like, I actually have no idea, or they'll point out, you do know there's a new collection type that just does this all for you. It's like, oh man, I didn't know that. Thanks for telling me that. So I think that's such a good reminder that beginner's eyes and asking the obvious question has incredible value.
Right on. Right on.
So Glenn, oh yeah, Glenn's absolutely right. I love the excitement in the attendees when they see how it works and how to use it. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just again such a stark reminder that we all we aren't born with any of this knowledge. When we're born, we know how to do what? We know how to like cry. We know how to like
Yeah.
go to the bathroom, eat. Like there's a pretty small set in that
Yeah.
instruction domain there. And so I've thought about this with so many things that we all had to learn these things. We all had to learn a programming language. We all had to
Completely.
learn how to talk. All these things we take for granted, how to walk. And it's just a reminder that we all start at that point. And there might be a thing that you're an absolute expert on that I know absolutely nothing about. And hey, that's actually kind of a cool thing that you now have an opportunity to teach me something, and vice versa. And anyway, so
Yeah.
now
Well,
I'm just rambling, buddy.
well, no, that's, to me, like, it's been one of the big value adds for Nuru. Like,
Yeah.
we so Jake wanted to build something that was scalable, knew he didn't know the first thing about running a nonprofit, so he goes to business school. While he's
Sure.
at business school, he's like, hey, I don't know how to create a business. Can
Mm-hmm.
you help me? To professors and it became kind of a project for, I think, like 30 of his classmates helped him research the last 50 years of development successes and
Wow.
failures, and he was getting
Wow.
mentored by like half a dozen professors there. And it came through this refining, and that was the 1.0 version. Like, of
Mm-hmm.
course, there's learnings and growth and adaptation,
Sure.
and
Of course.
but like having a group to beat things
Yeah.
around, and
Yeah.
and then I think I may have these terms wrong, but like I think when he was in the business school there, they had two groups. Like they called them turbos and poets, and
Oh.
the turbos were people who came from an undergrad in business. Maybe they were working for, in the finance sector. And then the poets were people like Jake. He was
Yeah.
he was a Marine, right? Like, and so hey, you probably didn't have like your precursor accounting and economics courses during your undergrad, and so they're playing catch up. And I
Sure.
think that being an outsider there also, and even in like the nonprofit sphere, like Jake coming in as a Marine, I was a chemist in my background. I worked for like what was at the time the world's largest generic drug manufacturer. And like, it's not, so if you're wondering if you could do something like
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of proof that you don't have to
Yeah.
be an expert in international development to help,
Right.
and to make a difference. And so, yeah, just you made me think about like, oh yeah, we're like this random hodgepodge of people
Right.
that didn't study this to
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, to sort of draw that to technology, I see the same thing in how people get into this industry. I'm constantly amazed at how many folks get into software in very non-traditional ways. And some of that's just the fact that it's such a young industry. It hasn't been around that long. There's obviously folks that go through an undergraduate program like I did in computer science, but then there's countless others who are self-taught or they went to a boot camp. And, to me, it's just having that desire to do it and to tinker, and that intense curiosity. And, I think it's a good reminder that we all have those opportunities, and you shouldn't let sort of that lack of expertise be the reason you don't try something. I think that's another part of the pandemic that I thought was kind of interesting, how many folks picked up a new hobby and started doing something they'd never done before. I started baking bread, and that evolved into pizzas. And, the other thing we picked up at some point, my friend Paul recommended a different grill for me, and I've done a ton of different things on that I never did before on my old Weber, because this thing gives me some capabilities, so it's willing to just like last week, my wife had bought some ribs, and I've never cooked ribs before in my life. So I'm like, I have no idea how to do this. And she's like, well, what could possibly go wrong? If they suck, we'll order dinner. I think, again, getting back to that point of sometimes we worry so much about the consequences. And sometimes like the consequence in our mind is so much bigger than it really is in reality. So in my head, I'm kind of sweating like, oh man, like what if I ruin these ribs or they're just inedible? Yeah, I wasted some money, I guess, on the ribs, and that kind of sucks, but I'll just order dinner, or we'll scrounge something. I was Everett and I were working on something soccer related last weekend, and I looked at him, I said, dude, you gotta relax a little bit here. It's not like if you screw this up, you're not going to eat. This isn't the difference between, there's no life and death here. It's a hobby, so relax, take a deep breath. The consequences are a lot smaller than we think.
Yeah. It's what's the book, not grit, mindset, fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Like we get stuck in a fixed mindset, where I can never learn this new coding language. I can never learn this new platform, and love it. So for us, or for me, I won't put my wife in this category. My wife is an amazing swimmer, and until 2020, I was not. If I could make it to the other end of the pool,
victory.
Huge victory, and huge laughter probably for everybody watching involved. Me. But yeah, I moved a lot of water, but I didn't move myself. But I learned how to swim, and just had fun with it a little bit of time. And also I picked up the violin this year. So
oh my gosh.
I just literally picked it up.
That's fine.
Kidding,
that makes sense.
I put it back down. No.
That's smart. That's smart.
We can get stuck and thinking that, especially in the workplace, right? Like in the workplace, you mentioned that company that was producing widgets, and there were steps in the process. Like part of what fries innovation is, hey, this is the way we've always done it. I don't want to risk something new, because what if we don't meet the deadline? And maybe we risk something new and we hit the deadline, or I'm bouncing all over our topics, but like you burned the ribs. Oh, that sucks. You burnt the ribs, but you learned, hey, I don't want to do things that way next time. It's not the end of the world. And we get locked in that so much.
So Glenn picked up organic gardening apparently, and apparently his plants really like tech podcasts. So that's good to know. I didn't know that, but
I'm glad they're tuning in. I hope they're tuning in.
I hope so. I hope the plants are really enjoying the show today. My grad students last week, Venkat was in guest lecturing, and one of the things that, and I don't remember exactly how he got on this topic, but it made me think about the fact that so many organizations, it's more comfortable or more palatable to fail conventionally. Let's just do things the way we've always done it, even though projects fail or they don't get the metrics we want, or they don't succeed, et cetera. But we'd rather fail the way we've always failed before than succeed radically. Because if you propose something radical and it doesn't work out, well, why didn't you do it the way we've always done it? That's how we've always done it. Most dangerous phrase you can say in an organization, frankly.
Right.
And it amazes me that people are so often afraid to succeed almost. And again, like what could possibly go wrong? If we've had 4, 5, 6 projects in a row and things haven't worked out the way we wanted them to, what's the harm in trying something different?
Right on.
Anyway,
Right
same
on.
thing with, picking up a new hobby or, learning the violin or trying to make bread. What's the worst thing that happens? The bread's no good. You compost it. Moving on,
And like, looking for opportunities to serve, going,
Yeah,
where we started. Like, if you're looking for opportunities to serve, what's the, like, if you don't, then nothing happens, right? Like,
right.
nothing at all happens. But if you look for an opportunity and it doesn't work out on the first try, like, you're learning, and you're learning what could help, what could make a
Right.
difference. So
Right. Yeah, and that's another thing I always try to remind Everett of is that there's nothing wrong with making mistakes. Mistakes is how we learn. It's
completely.
making the same mistakes again and again and again that's problematic. Hopefully, we're learning from those experiences and learning
Right
from
on.
other people's experiences as well. And to me, kind of going full circle. I mean, that's part of what I love about these events that we do is this opportunity to learn from other people's experience and to take it back to where we all began with the hallway track here. I mean, this to me is such a huge part of what we get out of these events that I'm trying to find out. Here's Glenn's comment from earlier. You're not supposed to talk about the
Right.
secret hallway track. Well, this is the only place you get it, right? And so I think it's hopefully we've given you a good excuse to try to come to an event. I mean, we got Spring One coming up here in December, and if you thought this was an interesting conversation or want to have similar ones, please join us. Go to an event and just see what happens. You just never know who you're going to run into, who you're going to meet.
Completely.
I mean, if it weren't for this tech ecosphere, I wouldn't have you in my life, man. And I wouldn't be as rich as it is. And, this conversation is to me, the embodiment of that. Right. But
Oh,
anyway,
likewise.
well,
Feel like
I could keep chatting with you for another 2, 3 hours, but I know you have a real job and I won't keep you from it any longer. This has been a blast, man. I appreciate your time. Thank you for hanging out with me. I
yeah, thank
know
you.
I'm
This is
guessing you and I
such
are
a
going to
gift.
see each other in December.
I'm hoping so.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I might actually be doing a couple of talks too. So there's that. Like, I'm sharing Nuru,
Heck
like,
yeah.
and then doing a talk on thank you. Uh, on what are the two talks? One is best practices for remote teams,
Oh,
and
heck yeah.
that's just, as an organization, we've been remote. Like, all of our staff that are based in the U.S. are in different cities, or actually
Sure.
based not on the continent of Africa, are in different cities around the world.
Sure.
And then we've been doing that for 14 and a half years.
Right.
And then the other is leadership when you're the problem. So that'll be fun.
Well, that's
Um,
fantastic.
and that's Glenn. It's so true. Like, we benefit more when we serve
Yeah.
than the difference that we're making. Like, there's something that changes in us when
Right.
we look to deploy resources to help other people.
Right.
I think we become a little more human, actually,
Yeah.
in that process, and
Mhm.
we could use a lot more humanity
Yeah.
in our world. So
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Well, I appreciate your time again. I will be back next week with another Billy. That wasn't deliberate. I wasn't trying to go back to back Billies, but I do find that amazing. So we'll have Mr. Corando with us next week. My brain always likes to transpose a couple of Billy's last name letters there, but I'm very excited to hang out with him. But I have enjoyed the absolute heck out of this, and I
likewise.
just really appreciate your time as always, my friend. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing you and your amazing family soon.
Thank you. I look forward to the same.
Fantastic.
It's always a pleasure.
Cheers.
Bye.